Hello there, and welcome along to episode 2 and season 2 of the Gardener Ben podcast. It's been a really busy week out in the garden. Slowly but surely, I've been clearing my way through the herbaceous borders and clearing the abundance of last year. Also, in exciting news, I've also picked up all of the Hazel supports from a local supplier who grows from over near Wimborne. I buy lots of different hazel from him, including some bean poles, which are around 8 to 10 foot long, and of course the pea sticks, which over the coming weeks and months will be slowly worked into the herbaceous borders to offer all of my plants a lot of support. I'll also, over the next week or so, be constructing the supports for the sweet peas. This year I've moved my sweet peas to a different location, as I tend to do every 2 years. It's a really good idea to keep the crops moving in the garden to make sure that you're not carrying pest and disease problems from season to season. So the ground has had to be fully prepared, and back in October I mulched it deeply with around 6 inches of fresh organic matter. Sweet peas, as I've mentioned before, are particularly hungry, and the soil needs to be prepared well ahead of time to make sure that any organic matter you add to the area has plenty of time to break down and release its valuable nutritional value into the soil, making it available for when the sweet peas get bedded out in just a few weeks' time. I've also had to install a new drip irrigation system into this area of the garden to make sure they have all of the moisture they need for growing in the season ahead. I've also been over to my favourite dahlia nursery to pick up this year's new dahlia tubers, which will be new varieties for myself in the garden this year. It's always a little bit of a roulette wheel deciding who has survived the winter in the ground and who unfortunately has failed and succumbed to the winter frosts. This year I've added around 20 new varieties to the collection, and I'll be bringing them on in around 3-litre pots in the greenhouse over the next couple of weeks. And of course I'll be sharing tutorials on Instagram, YouTube and TikTok of just how I do that. It's also time to start thinking about chitting your potatoes. Now, if you don't have anywhere to put them too early, don't worry about the chitting process. There's no need for you as soon as February hits for you to be laying out potatoes in egg boxes and placing them in the spare room on a windowsill. Keep your potatoes in a cool, dry, dark place where they'll store for several weeks before now. The chitting process is basically to get them a little bit of a head start and into the ground nice and early, especially if you want to bring on an early crop. It's a really good idea if you already know where you want to plant your potatoes this coming season, whether it be at home or on the allotment, to actually start warming the ground. Traditionally, this is done by laying out large sheets of plastic, which through solar gain will make the soil warm and force the potatoes on early. The other thing you can do if you're planning on growing on a much smaller scale is just to place a large upturned bucket in the locations where you plan to plant your seed potatoes. Don't forget you can break these up into several portions. Once they've started chitting and you have a series of shoots, you can simply divide the potato into different sections. You also don't have to buy incredibly expensive seed potatoes for this either. Shop-bought potatoes that have simply gone past their best and started to grow, for instance in the bottom of the cupboard, make ideal varieties for growing as well. Make sure you keep a note of the variety so you can label them up properly once they're in the ground. I tend to grow my potatoes in large pots and buckets, which I earth up over a period of time. I find this much easier to do on a small scale, and with only 2 of us in the household, but just 3 potatoes per large bucket gives us more than enough potatoes of each variety for 1 week's worth of meals. And every time I want them, all I need to do is lift the bucket and simply tip it out onto the floor in an open piece of ground. Meaning looking for my golden potatoes in the soil is far easier than getting the spade out and actually digging them out the ground. I'll also this week be sowing some broad beans, which I prefer to bring on in toilet roll tubes to make them easier for bedding out later, just as I do with the sweet peas. This week I have the pleasure in talking to Tristan, known as the Cheshire Head Gardener on Instagram. I promised you I was going to be bringing you lots of really interesting accounts that I encounter on my social media journey, and Tristan and his story are no different. I hope that you enjoy our conversation. Today I'm joined by Tristan, who uses the username Cheshire Head Gardener on Instagram. Tristan, welcome along. Thank you very much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying the weather at the minute. It's finally cheered up a bit, so that's nice.
I know, I know. Before Christmas, so your posts on Instagram were very much focused on the fact you were wet and soggy and miserable and had enough. I think as everybody would in sort of November and December. So I'm glad to hear it's cheered up a little bit for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's one of those things that being a farmer's son, all you ever hear is the weather. So, and now I'm a gardener, that's all we ever talk about. So,
So for those that listening that don't actually follow along on Instagram, one, they're crazy because they should follow your account because it's a beautiful account. But tell us a little bit about you and what it is that you do.
well, I'm a head gardener on Barnston Estate, and I've got about, I like to say, I started with 6 acres. Now I've got up to 16 acres, and it's just me running around like an idiot. Um, yeah, it's a bit of an interesting scenario. But yeah, no, I run and look after the gardens, and yeah, it's a bit of everything really: running, maintenance, mowing. Um, and I've been there now nearly 10 years.
Oh
It's amazing how
wow,
time flies.
it is, yeah,
I've always been a gardener ever since a toddler, and my gran, who's still going, I was actually celebrating her 19th birthday the other day. She taught me.
yeah.
So, yeah, so from a young age, but I've always had this mentality growing up on the farm, like go around the back of the scrapyard or find something, create something, build something for the garden. Because a lot of people are very lucky you could go and buy stuff, and whereas we had to make do, and we sort of created and built stuff as a kid,
Yeah.
dens and things. And I sort of when I look at a garden now, especially estate gardens, I love it where you've got little paths going through, and you think kids running around and secret areas and grottos. And so yeah, I try and build as much as I can. But I have to admit, over 10 years, I seem to have used all our stock up. So all the stuff my boss has scavenged over the last 80 years, I seem to have used everything up. And he's like, we're going to have to start taking stuff down. You're using too much. Yeah, and
So talk me through how the garden has gone from 6 acres to 16 acres.
well,
Is
it's
that
I
because you
mean,
keep building things?
well, it officially is 6 acres,
Yeah.
6 to 8 acres, and we have a wall garden. So to a bit of a brief history on it, my boss came back in the 80s and took over from his uncle, and it used to be a dairy farm.
Okay.
And so there was no gardens. The cows in the wall gardens, the old horse yard was a dairy, and so from
It's
the 80s he
and
started.
may I ask, is that left over from the Second World War? Was the garden removed
Yeah,
during the Second World War?
I not particularly. I think the problem was when the major, his uncle, um, was when he took over during this after the Second World War, tax was so high that he became a farmer, and
Hmm.
it was the only way the place could survive. It's a quite, nice size estate, but decided to be a farmer there, so everything just fell into disrepair. And when Michael came back in the 80s, he started with the horse yard and got the clock working, which every Monday I go into the tower and wind it up still,
Oh
and it's been
wow.
there since 1842.
Yeah.
And we just did a load of work to the tower, rebuilt that, and so the garden has really developed from his travels, because he worked for Massey Ferguson and traveled the world. They lived in Switzerland, and so the gardens have a real inspiration from. He loves tropical gardens, so we have a subtropical garden with massive. But we like to say it's the tallest bananas in Cheshire, but I doubt they are. But and so everything. Obviously, his wife Inga, she's very keen on English gardens. And so we've got the white garden. Oh, the wall garden's supposed to be white Italian, and it's got its themes: Chinese bridges, and so it's got a bit of all sorts from around the world because they traveled so much. And so it's kind of an interesting garden. And no matter where I go in the garden, and there's no lie, I'll dig something up and there'll be a brick or there'll be a path or something of the original uh, basis to the garden underneath it.
Yeah.
And
I
I
think I
suppose
think that's the law of the proverbial sod, isn't it? Wherever you need to dig a decent hole, you'll always come out with several wheelbarrows full of rubbish. But if you just want to, I don't
completely.
know, if you don't want to put a daffodil bulb in the ground, you've got the best bit of soil in the entire garden. It cuts like
It's
butter.
it's madness. I mean, we were building like a summer house at the minute, and there was a slab underground. And when they used to grow fruit trees against walls, they would actually put a slab down and then plant the tree on top to send the roots out, so you wouldn't have a tap root.
Yeah.
But under that was a load of broken plates and slate, and just that was last week, and it'd been there, 150, 200 years. It's just astonishing that stuff just keeps coming up.
Yeah.
It's quite remarkable. And then, so as I say, the gardens are 6 acres, but then we've got a field next to us which is going to wildflower meadow this year.
Lovely.
And then we've got a wood next to that, which we've sort of created paths in. It's very, very wildlife friendly, and we've got the River Dee on the front, so that when you go to the top, you look down over the river, over this horseshoe bend in the river. And I started by sneaking a path down at the bottom end. And then I was like, actually, if we do a really big avenue straight across the middle here, all the little old deers who we take round on tours can just walk straight across and see down. And I got completely carried away because I said, oh, I'll build another temple there. I saw Pinterest, the worst thing you can ever find in the world for ideas. It's so annoying because you go, oh, I'd love to build that. So I've taken down about 50 trees 2 weeks ago, pine trees and all sorts, and that's going to be the timbers for my new temple idea.
Yeah, it's quite a substantial temple.
Yeah, well, I mean, fair size, yeah. So but I get carried away, totally carried away.
I think the best of us do. I think what you're describing is very much North Lodge, the garden that I'm here on at home. That again, it's not as grand or as large, but I've again taken bits of salvage from everywhere and bits of corrugated sheet which I've turned into that were once a piggery here that I've turned into my potting shed,
Fantastic.
a coal bunker that I repurposed and turned into a water butt. I mean, somebody messaged me on Instagram the other day and said, "Oh, I remember you posting a little figurine. It's called Atlas. He's a cherub sat on a ball." And it's like,
Mm.
well, she said, "Where did you get him?" It's like, well, a customer asked me to throw him away, and I just brought him home and couldn't bear to chuck him in the skip. So he's by the front door, and my garden is just full of bits and pieces that I have salvaged, repurposed. Looked at
Absolutely,
looked at them and gone,
absolutely.
no, it's too good to throw away. What can I do with
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Well, we had the chap doing the lead work on the bell tower, and he made 5 molds of the Welsh dragon because
Hmm.
his little thing to say he's built it was this. And he was going to throw these away. I was like, no, I'll have them. And like one's missing a leg and a tongue. I thought this is brilliant. I can use these in something. I just couldn't bear to throw something away.
So there'll be the decorative pieces on something that you build
A-
eventually.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So talk us through a typical day at the estate. What I mean, you've mentioned you're winding the clock and you're out in the woodlands and mowing and bits and pieces. But what does a normal day look like? How many of you are there as well? Because it's a large
It's just
garden.
me.
Let's just
It's just
okay.
me.
So when you're saying we have mowed and
Ah,
we have done,
oh yeah, no,
we're
it's
using the
me.
royal we.
Yeah, well, my boss, Michael,
It's extraordinary. You want to be telling
yeah,
Michael that you're doing a huge amount of work. I mean, you're covering a
yeah.
massive
Well,
amount of ground.
we do. I mean, I especially with the gardens. When I first started, our machinery was okay, and I
Hmm.
said, look, if you want me to do this, we really need to upgrade everything because, I spent an entire day mowing the lawns
Yeah.
to get them. I do like them perfect. So we upgraded mowers and we upgraded strimmers and hedge cutters, and you just don't faff. That's the key. You
No.
just sort of go, right, this is what we're doing, this is how I'm going to do it. And
Well, again, it's the right tool for the right job, isn't it? It's that you can
yeah,
spend so
yeah,
much time with a piece of broken equipment, nursing it along when
yeah,
actually. So, what brand
yeah.
of lawnmower are you working with?
I've got a Kubota
Hmm.
twin cut, which is very good, but they're quite heavy on the axles, so the lawns do sink a bit.
Yeah.
But I've also got a Westwood, an old one with a roller, which puts lovely stripes in the lawns.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was when I first started, there were shrubs in the middle of the lawns, and none of the borders are edged with steel. So got rid of shrubs out the lawns. I got steel edging put in. I said, well, we'll reduce borders, and I have to admit, over 10 years, I've actually put more borders in now. But it is about just keeping nice straight lines, long vistas, and also the
And
planting I try and do.
keeping them easy to mow and less
Abs-
turns because otherwise they just wear and just
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and just keep it nice. I do have 2 chaps who come for half a day once every other week. But they sometimes do stuff on around the estate, or I might say, could you just possibly quick trim that or something? Or
Yeah.
they do help with the maintenance of the wood a bit. But I have said now we're going into the other wood. We might need to upgrade a few more things. But yeah, no. I got so a normal typical day is like watering the greenhouse, which again was a total. When I first started, I had a tiny little old conservatory, which was took off the house. That was my greenhouse. Then we got a lovely a Gabriel Ash greenhouse because they used to be on the estate. And then I said it's not big enough. So then we went into the cowshed, and then in the end, I finally got the dairy take the tin roof off, and we put a perspex roof on it.
Yes.
So my greenhouse is probably bigger than my house now, and yeah, and then because I like every time they go away, I love to surprise them. So I try and build something while they're away. So it was
Are
Michael's
they
eight. Sorry.
are they currently away now? Is that why you're building something now?
No, no, unfortunately, they normally go away around now, and they'll come back and go, "What have you done?" Nothing. Yeah. So I tried. I mean, I put in all automatic watering systems in the greenhouse, and I sort of built a big waterfall and stone thing in there because I wanted this as a butterfly house, but it turned out the robins knew how to get in, so I was like, well, I won't bother with that. So uh,
It's just opening a robin farm, basically. Yes.
it's lovely. I mean, I do have a couple just wandering around following me all day, and then of course I've got my two Jack Russells as well, so they come tearing after me. So yeah, but I always try it. I find it if I work on the borders in the mornings, do my hard work at the beginning, and then say about 2:30 I'll do a bit of mowing. So
Yeah.
it just eases the day off, you know. And sat on the mower all day, you just come out like a jelly. So you're just vibrating. So yeah,
It's funny you should mention about the fact you didn't have a greenhouse. I did my sandwich year for my degree at a large private estate, which is still privately owned now, a
mm,
27 acre garden on a
wow.
several hundred thousand acre estate.
Mm,
And I recently, about 3 years ago, I've been looking for your job for a job like yours for quite some time. So
mm.
I'm gonna put a little get your boss to hit me up. But no, I'm joking. I'm not going to steal your job.
Oh
But
no.
because they're so few and far between where you find a garden where you can put your own stamp on it, and or you can maintain what's already there and continue to develop the garden. So I have
Absolutely.
such wonderful memories of this particular
Mm,
estate. I moved straight out of my family home, and lived in the bothy, which was built into the Victorian walls of
nice.
this estate, age 17, and there was me just
Mm.
rattling around in the garden. And I went back there 3 years ago, and the garden, there was nothing left. All the borders had been dug up. The
No.
greenhouse, the roof had fallen in, and there was no glass left.
Oh
And my
no.
sort of, as I walked round it, and the now peer was saying, "Oh, we want to breathe some life back into it." And as we rounded vistas and bits and pieces, like my bottom lip just sort of trembled, and I thought, "What happened here? Where did it all
Mm.
go?" I mean, and it's literally disappeared. And I thought to myself, I don't think I've got the strength to do it. So I was offered the job, but I very kind. But yeah, jobs like yours are very, very few and far between. So how did you go about getting the job that you're currently working in? And do you have any advice for anybody that, for instance, is looking to follow the same path?
Do you know, it's a really, I get questions like this quite a bit, and I think, if I'm honest, I'm just very lucky. I got actually, yeah, I did used to do a bit of maintenance for them on the side. I was doing my own gardening, landscape gardening, and it was the problem is with me is it's probably not a good thing to admit, but I've never been pushed by the profit margin.
No.
I've always been about creating. I've always
Yeah.
enjoyed creating and building, but also long-term projects and stuff like that. And so the gardener at the estate was actually retiring, and someone said, "Oh," to my sister who used to, she's a land agent, and said, "Oh, isn't your brother a gardener?" And I literally got the job through that. So
Really.
it's yeah, no, I was very, very. I mean, the beauty of it is that you know, it's a private estate, it's private family who love create, and you're completely right. I near enough would be given free reign, and the thing is, I get their taste, I understand what they like, and that's really important. I think the only thing I've always said to anyone who's going for a job is it really is a very important relationship you have between you and your boss,
It's very, very
because you
intimate, isn't it?
incredibly so, and you got to get their ideas, and if they've got different ideas to you, then it might not be the great way you want to go.
No.
It is a symbiotic relationship you have with them. You've got to get on well with them to actually achieve something quite remarkable.
Well, I was
So, and
also lucky. I was also lucky enough about 2 years ago to be offered an estate at a job at a very, very prestigious estate here in the New
mm,
Forest, which used to belong to the Crown and then was sold to some very, very wealthy owners that only really use it for about 6 weeks of the year. But
mm,
because they're only there 6 weeks of the year, the gardens are basically just geraniums. They're just
really, good
borders
lord,
and borders of geraniums. And I'm wandering around thinking, well, the salary's great, the
yeah,
location's
yeah,
great, the backdrop is stunning,
yeah, yeah,
but it's just geraniums. And I thought,
yeah, yeah.
thought to
No,
myself, no,
it's
I can't do this. I need something more technical than this. Yeah. But then the money was
yeah.
great, and you think, can I do it? It's like, no, no, I can't. I'll be
I
bored
think I'd just die
senseless.
of boredom. I
Yeah.
would just literally die of boredom. I
And
don't.
I came home and I told Mark, and he said, for goodness sake, would you just take it? The money's great. It's like, no, I can't. I'm going to be having this conversation with you in 6 months' time, and I'm going to have to find something else to say. It's going to have to be a no. So yeah.
What was that? My father rang me up ages ago, and he says, "Tristan, there's a job going at Balmoral, and go for it. You could work for the king." And I was like, I couldn't think of anything worse. The pressure, and they don't want to change things. I know actually the king. It was actually when the queen was still alive, but he doesn't. He is changing his gardens, but.
Yeah.
I was just like, I couldn't. It's like, would you like to work for Chatsworth or the National Trust? I said, could you imagine the committees and the rubbish you have to go through?
And
Uh,
dealing with the people.
well, quite. I always, I talked to friends and I said, oh, I'm feeling a bit lonely today. I said, who have you seen? Jack Russells. But then actually when I start working with somebody, I was like, oh no, I'd rather be that sort of character. I'd rather be on my own. Let me get on with my job, and people come around and go, oh, can I help? No, I'm absolutely fine.
Oh
Please,
goodness.
I'm
This
so much quicker on my own than having to organise people.
this conversation seems very familiar because again, Mark tells me exactly the same when he tries to help me with things in the garden. He said, because I obviously started working with my father is in gardening because of me. He followed
Mm,
my path, not the other way around. And then
mm.
about 20 years ago, we started our family company. My dad has since retired, and Mark says to me, he said, if it's not your way or your dad's way, it's no way at all. It's like, well, again, I've been doing this for a long time. I've worked out the best way of doing things, and I can hold things up with varying bits of my body that doesn't require anybody else in my
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
in my space. And if it means I
yeah.
put it in my mouth or I hold it up with my foot, I can do all of
Yeah,
these
yeah,
things.
no, absolutely. I tell you, I mean, actually at home, we live in Chester, and I said to Mally, my husband, I was like, right, you can garden the front because you love talking to all the neighbours. I'll do the back. They're lovely, lovely neighbours. They're all lovely. But I literally poked my head out the door and was like, you've been out for 3 hours. What have you achieved? You are driving me mad. Um, and he's a great gardener. He's very good at plants and stuff like that. And his knowledge on plants is incredible. Yeah, I was like, no, you,
It's
you
sup- it,
crack on.
it's surprising. Mark doesn't obviously work in. He actually used to manage nurseries, and people used to. Oh, so you're in the same career? It's like no, he manages children's nurseries, not plant
Ah,
nurseries.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
it's extraordinary the questions he can answer now. That his plant knowledge is actually really rather very good. He's just been obviously listening to me drone on for far far too long.
Oh, I wish I
So
could remember
so,
names. I
so
just go
what?
spiky or something.
So what does Mally do for a living? Is he in a similar sort of field or does something
Well,
completely different?
he used to be gardening, but he's on something completely different now.
Oh,
I think
okay.
he's 5 years older than me, bless him, and he's like, no, I'm sick of the winters. I can't do it anymore. So I was like, fair enough. So he's in a suit now. So
Okay. All right.
and happy as Larry, bless him. So.
Good. But so outside of work, what other interests do you have? I saw you had a recent trip before Christmas. Do you want to tell everybody what you were doing then? You were off doing.
I was playing polo. Well, I was doing. Went to Argentina with a friend from university actually,
Yeah.
and they buy and train polo ponies. So I went out to watch the Argentine Open. But I traveled for 24 hours. Got there, so don't worry, you can relax. And the next day, I was, oh, by the way, we're off to Uruguay. Oh, great! So straight into a car, off to Uruguay. I went to look at all sorts of polo. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I love looking at farming and horses, and the beautiful. Obviously, we were staying in polo places, so the gardens were just spectacular. Different thing. And but we're driving around, and it's vast, absolute vast place. It's quite remarkable. Oh, and that was it. I thought, great, going to Argentina, steak, give me steak. And because everyone was entertaining us, they all got sushi because it's like the uber posh thing to do out there. So everywhere I went, I had sushi. I was like, all I want is steak. Just give me a good steak. That'd be amazing. So that was an interesting scenario. And yeah, so it was great. It was great.
So you lost about £6 before you came home then,
Yeah, no, I really
living
did.
off of fish and rice.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I did have some good steak here and there, and but yeah, no, it was a fascinating trip. Yeah, loved it. But I don't. I used to. My friend Alice and me, we both went to Royal Agricultural College, and I went to Pershore first to do horticulture, and then I went to the Royal Ag because my father wanted me to, and
Yeah.
it was great because I made the best friends ever. But it was more agriculture, horticulture, so it was
Hmm.
like growing 1,000 acres of roses and stuff, and no
Yeah.
interest whatsoever. And on that scale, and the lady I remember, she's always saying, "Look, you really should go into design or building, not, this isn't your thing." And she was completely right. But from that, we learned polo, and and bossed around. And she said, I think we finished uni, and I went to Australia, and I worked at a cattle ranch in the outback on horseback, and I ended up building an Italian garden in the middle of Queensland, in the middle of 3 hours from any town. And then at that point, I was like, I think I should be a gardener. Wherever I go, I end up building gardens. And then I ended up actually grooming and playing polo down in near Melbourne,
Hmm.
and I ended up redoing their gardens, horse yard, clean that up, sorted the tree, and I was like, God, wherever I go, I'm always gardening. So it was just part of my passion and what I did.
It's
So
a very natural progression.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's funny. It's funny because when before I actually did my college and then my university course, that I did several. My family is a farming family as well. I come from
Mm,
several generations of dairy farmers,
mm,
and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted a land-based career of some description. It was going to be
mm,
practical, obviously, like yourself, very open about my dyslexia, and I never, although I achieved very well at school and
mm,
got great good grades, it sitting and writing and reading is not something that interests me whatsoever. So I knew I wanted to be outside, I wanted to be active, and I did several taster day courses with my local agricultural college, and I did a bit of pig farming, I did a little bit of sheep farming, and I
mm.
did a little bit of fisheries. I thought, no, none of those are quite right. They
Yeah.
don't quite fit. And once again ended up in the horticultural sector, and I did it for about 4 or 5 years. After I finished my courses, I then went into management for a garden centre and then onto what we call sheds, like a B&Q and home base, and then thought, oh my
Yep.
goodness, I cannot deal with the people anymore. I can't deal with, and it was all well and good when things were nice, but yeah, people seem to hold you accountable for the fact you won't give them your money back when they bought a pot of paint they don't like that they've had for 15 months, and they decide to
Oh gosh.
hurl it at you across
Oh my
across a
God.
checkout. And you think, I'm not paid enough money to deal with you people. I'm going to go back. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, okay, the money's good, but then I thought, no, I'm going to go and do something different, and I went and sold cars for a while. Which I did thoroughly enjoy. I really enjoyed the people. I did
Mm,
enjoy, and I liked the chase. It sounds really really silly. I mean, I love people, and I love
mm,
talking to people, and the chase of selling a car was I found absolutely exhilarating. But then after a while, I used to sit in the showroom and look out the window and think, oh goodness me, look, it's a beautiful day, isn't it lovely? And after a while, I just couldn't stand it anymore and had to go back to it. So I had about 5 or 6 years out before finally returning to
right.
the horticultural sector. And sort of the money's rubbish, the hours are long, the weather's rubbish obviously sometimes, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
one of the only things that makes me happy. But and I do nothing else. But now I garden at home, and I garden for work, and then I garden online, and I garden for 7 hours a day on my phone. It's it's just non-stop.
Yeah, completely. Oh no, it's a funny. It is a funny life. It's you've got to have a real. outdoor passion because the weather will just tear you apart. I mean, the woods are flooded at the minute, and that's getting dying. Oh, for goodness sake! Yeah, I just, they always say, come, friends go, let's go for a walk through the hills. I'm like, I'm outdoors every day. That's great. And then I'll never forget it. My sister would ring me up and go, why are you indoors on a sunny day? I have been in the sunshine all week. I am burnt up. I just need to sit down for 5 minutes. And then 5 minutes later, I'm bored and I'm off doing something else. So, uh,
I've been known to come home and get in the bath and turn off the light and shut the bathroom door just because I want to be in the dark.
yes, yeah. I think if
Yeah.
anything I would love, I mean, I, I loved it when I went to Thailand, and we stayed in the most amazing hotel with just the plants were incredible. It was just I thought, God, I could live here. I would love to work here. And then you think, well, actually, there's no grass or there's none, and you don't realize how good England is for gardening. I know the
Yes.
weather. You look at the news and everyone's going away, everyone's leaving. You think, well, if England just had a bit better weather, no one would leave England because
No,
it
no.
is so spectacular. We are so lucky.
But they don't
Um,
call it the world's country garden for nothing, do they? It's
yeah, absolutely. We are a passionate. I mean, it was only Thailand was the only place I went to enormously where they'd have a balcony and there's just flowers falling off the balconies. Very passionate about it. Everywhere there's little garden centres and I thought this is lovely. But you come home,
often by the side of the road with all sorts of
yeah,
weird and wonderful things growing in
yeah.
random containers, tires and
Yeah,
buckets of mayonnaise that they've emptied out. Yeah, it's extraordinary.
absolutely. It is.
Yeah,
It is remarkable, and it's just such a lovely. No matter where you go in the world, it's something anyone can talk about.
yeah.
Everyone. It's a real opener, and you can go anywhere. I mean, I've always fancied going abroad and again and sort of working somewhere. I mean, I keep having this thing in my head of Italy because I really love Italian Renaissance and Baroque and gardening and stuff like that. But
All
when
the drama,
yeah, I mean
all the
the villa. If
spectacle.
if someone said what would you if you won the lottery, what would you do? I'd say I'd buy a plot of land and I'd build the Villa d'Este in England, pretty much. And then I'd have just like d'Este, I'd have nothing left at the end of it. So yeah, but then I love the mechanics of it because there's no pumps. It's
No,
all natural pressure flow. It's amazing.
yeah.
So.
Well, you've answered most of the questions I've got scribed in front of me, but it just naturally talking. But as we've talked about you that you share on Instagram, your garden that you work on is full of absolutely amazing features, and by the sounds of them, most of those are down to you over the last sort of 10 years. What's next? I mean, obviously you're building another temple. This is in the woods. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're doing like a wooden frame temple, all natural logs and whatnot, and that's it's just going to be a point of access, so that'll be fun. And then we have an obelisk on the estate, which represents one of the because they're all a military family,
Hmm.
and we're building a slight replica of that. Um, which should be fun, but keep that one under my hat. And obviously now we're doing the summer house as well in the walled garden. So we seem to have quite a few projects going on at the minute, which is a bit scary.
Again, there's the
So
royal we again, isn't it? I
I
have I.
know, I know, I know. Well, I've got the joiners on the estate who are
Okay,
actually
so
doing. Yeah, no, trust me, they are. They've done the legs and they turned up and oh my God, they look amazing. When they do all the lovely
I've
artwork in it and
seen a sneaky peek, yeah, today
yeah,
on the
yeah.
grid, yeah.
So they've just turned up today, and I've just had to pop and get some undercoat before talking to you. So that's my job tomorrow. I've got to
Is
undercoat them
painting.
all. Well, just undercoat it, and then hopefully it's going up on Wednesday. I think it's going up on
Uh-huh.
Wednesday.
Oh, so it's
Um,
quite soon then.
yes, yes, absolutely. So there's that, and then which I'm really looking forward to because we planted something like 4,000 tulips this year, I
Oh,
think.
lovely, yeah.
In all the planters, and I'm really looking forward to seeing all that. They're just starting to bud up, and you're like, oh, and the first, I mean, everyone on Instagram is showing like pictures of snowdrops. I was like, where the ruddy hell are all my snowdrops? And I came back this morning, I was like, oh, they're
There
up
they
at
are.
last. Yeah, and all this stuff. You're like, oh, finally. And then I was like, oh, this is lovely. Um,
And
and
what drives me mad about social media, especially with gardening accounts, is they start posting alliums in December. And you think, so
Yes.
good, can we please just celebrate the season we're in? Whether it's wet and muddy, every season has its beauty. Would you please slow down? And then by the time it gets to, I don't know, the second week of February, they're already posting tulips that everybody knows aren't in flower. And you think, well,
Mm.
there's all well and good posting an aspirational picture, but can we try and just sort of focus on what is going?
Yeah, it's a bit
The,
like vegetables, isn't it? You can't have asparagus now. Don't be disgusting. It's just like just enjoy it when it's there,
yeah.
rather than everything. But then I am forcing stuff in the greenhouse, so I've got bulbs in the hot beds and stuff to get them up early, so they look nice
Yeah.
on the table outside the doors and stuff. So I am cheating a little bit. So.
Well, it's not cheating. It's just
Well, but yeah, no, I know. At the minute, so I try and do everything, but at the minute I'm just growing seeds in the seed beds, and it's so expensive to buy seeds. It's astronomical. So I collect all the ones I can,
yeah.
and last year was a disaster because my dahlias, delphinium, sorry, none of them took. I don't know what was wrong with the seed this year. They've just gone mad. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is incredible.
Have you ever
So
tried? Have you ever tried doing them as a very soft cutting, like you would do with a dahlia, just as they come up, slicing them off the crowns and striking them that
no,
way?
no, I haven't.
Oh, it might,
No.
might might be something to try. Obviously, they're obviously
Yeah.
several about a month ahead if you can get them. If you've got some established crowns,
Mm.
just nip take the soil away and just nip the shoots off as
Oh,
they come
okay.
up, very much like you would do a dahlia. And again,
Mm.
you get a plant within a month rather than having to wait sort of
I
three
think
months for it.
I do think that is a good skill though. I don't think I'm quite good enough at that.
I
Some things I know I'm good at, and some things I mean, seeds I'm good at growing and all sorts of bits and bobs. But um, well, saying that, yeah, I do trim stuff and shove it in the ground, and I'm always astonished it grows. So. But it's like anything. Some things I mean, I love plants and I love working with them and stuff. So, and I do try, but the amount of stuff I've got to do, I just don't have the
Yeah, I was just going
time
to
to.
say now I know you're on your Todd, so I'm astonished you're managing to cover so much ground.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we are lucky. A lot of it's.
But you're very tall, so you've obviously got very long legs. So you're obviously striding about the place like the BFG and great big bounds behind the lawnmower.
Yeah. I mean, on average, I do about 25,000 steps a day.
With two very small Jack Russells chasing after you.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Someone was saying to me the other day, because God, I've been on a mass diet recently. And I was like, well, I only burn about 5,000 calories a day, 5 to 6,000. So, oh, right, okay. Eat like a horse. So, no, I'm definitely looking forward to this summer. I just hope we get a nice one.
Yeah,
I
we
really
deserve
do.
one. Now, I think I know
Yeah.
the answer to this particular question because
Mm,
I think everybody will also know this, having now listened to this conversation this far. Now, is there actual a long-term plan for the garden that you're working on, or is this something that's happening organically? Are you working like I do on a space? And I can't draw. I can't draw for toffee. People are
mm,
always asking me to draw and design gardens, and I
mm,
say I go to a space and I feel a space, and this sounds very strange, but I'll go to a space and I'll feel a space and I'll see how it orientates, and things will naturally just come to me, and I can draw them on the ground three-dimensionally. I can walk them
mm.
out. I can pick up a stick and say, well, that's going to be that, and I'm going to mark something out that's going to be over there, and the orientation is right for your vegetable beds there, or your greenhouse should be turned this way. I can do all of that naturally, but when it comes to actually physically drawing, I can't draw for toffee. So, is there a plan for the garden moving forward, or is this something that's literally you're working in the space, you're seeing how things feel, and you looking at it from a different vista after you maybe cut a path down to the U bend in the river and looking back at it from another and going, actually, that would really work
Yeah,
there. Is that very
yeah.
much your process?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I can draw stuff up, but it's amazing. The garden is just evolving itself. You
Hmm.
know, the whole reason the summer house is going where it is because one day I just put a bench up there. I thought, God, it's lovely just sat here in the sunshine in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And it just sort of evolved from that. And it's sort of like, well, how people walk. So when we have guests, it's how people walk around. I mean, they love showing the garden to people. We have lots of private tours.
I was just going to say,
Um,
is the garden ever open to the public, or is it just
no,
private? It's
no,
just
just all private tours and charity,
family and friends and charity work.
charity work.
Hmm.
And so the whole thing from the tours and stuff, that's how everything sort of developed. And the great thing is their son, Edward, who runs it all, he's got a true passion for gardening as well. And so everything just automatically flows on. And then what I normally, if they don't quite agree with it, I normally wait till they're on holiday and then I do it anyway. And then they come back and go, "Oh, that's fantastic." Because I knew it would work in my head, I had to
Yes,
build it to
it's
show them
it's that
what it would. Yeah,
communicational barrier of sort of turning it into a
yeah,
three-dimensional object. Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, that's how I ended up with that weird temple pergola, I call it. At the end, I knew it had to be big, and then because when you stood at one end, and then when it always comes to building work, I always try and make it bigger because by the
Mm.
time you plant around it, it softens it so much. And in that
Yes,
size
yeah.
garden, I mean, the garden's big, but it's not Chatsworth or anything. So you just got to realize your scales and
Well,
organically build it. So
well, if I'm hoping if I'm ever up your way, I'm going to get an invitation to have a look around it because
absolutely.
I am absolutely chomping at the bit to come and have a look at it because it looks absolutely stunning.
It's a quirky one. It's
Yeah,
I mean,
I think the
he,
best ones are.
when he came back last year and he went. I went to go and buy some Annabelle hydrangeas. I said I need 25 of them. He said, "Righto, I'll go and get them." So off he went, and he came back the next day, and there was a tiger in a trailer. I was like, "What the heck is this doing here?" And he bought a great, and he said, "I found it at the back of this garden hunter. It was a bargain." It's this great big, and there's like monkeys hanging out of trees. It just anything that's a laugh, he loves it. So
Lovely.
it's a bit of a shock or a bit of something, but then you've got the glamorous, and Inges loves her roses, and so yeah, we have a bit of everything for everyone.
That sounds
And
wonderful. It's one of the nicest pieces of feedback we get when we obviously our garden here is only a third of an acre, but one of
mm,
the nicest things I get told two things that make my heart absolutely sing when the people are
mm.
here. That one, I don't share anywhere near enough of it on Instagram. They can't get a
You
size.
never can.
No, you can't.
You never can.
They say you don't show enough angles and you never know how many little vistas there are and
Mm,
the turns and there's little bits of reveal here and bits tucked away,
mm.
and we're very lucky with the way that we sit in the plot here that we're right in the middle, so there's like five or six different sections that work around us and
Yeah.
they're all very very different, and
Mm,
people say it's a lot more complicated than I get
mm,
on, which I think is for a gardener is just a really really lovely thing, because when we first opened the garden I thought, goodness me, people are gonna realize that I'm overcooking it, am I
mm,
overselling it, and it was completely opposite. And I thought, oh no, I want to stay in that wheelhouse. I want to downplay what is actually here rather than
mm.
oversell it and people to be overwhelmed and quite. And yeah, one woman last year, she was actually brought to tears. I mean, I'm not lying. She actually
Crikey, well
sobbed.
done.
She sobbed. I mean, it's like, oh, there we go.
Oh, well done.
You thought, box ticked. I've done that. Thanks very
Yeah,
much.
all done. Great close up. Um,
She said, and she was weeping. She said, "My mother would just absolutely love it here." She
mm,
said, "I could see her talking to you and sitting on this bench." It's like, there we
mm.
go. Those are the emotions I want to evoke as a gardener. That's what I want to do. That's the
Yeah,
wheelhouse. So,
you are right. I mean, I get people following me, and they come last year, and you just don't get the way you can't get the concept of the size or the flow, or it's impossible to get on a camera because your eyes are always bobbing around. And then when I video something, saying trying to show it, it never quite gets it right, or and then think, oh, why would anyone want to look at this? It's rubbish. And then
yes.
actually they go, oh my goodness, it's
You
fantastic. And I'm like,
you're gonna be very surprised as your footprint grows just to how much people actually pay attention. It's a little alarming. Yeah, my my YouTube following in America is very very intense. They know my house very intimately, and they know
oh
things about,
crikey.
yeah. And it's like,
It's a good thing they're in
oh,
America.
it's like, well, it's a little bit it's a little intense, but thank you. So
Yeah. Oh crumbs. No, I think actually, one of the nicest things is actually getting people to just. It's such a privilege to take people around the garden.
yeah,
It is such a nice thing because you you work so hard, and you suddenly and you get people and you take on a tour. And my boss loves taking people on tours around the garden, and he has a real passion, and it really makes you feel like you've done something worthwhile,
yeah.
and people just fascinated by it all. And
And
yeah,
if you're anything like me, Mark really gets really annoyed. He said, "You never seem to appreciate anything you've done." It's like, well, I do normally for about 5 minutes.
yeah, yeah,
Literally, you can tell when the season reaches its zenith. For
mm,
instance, when summer hits its absolute peak, and you'll stand
mm,
just for a moment and think, "No, that's its peak."
Mm,
That is it. You can feel it in your soul as a gardener. You think
mm,
that's the zenith of it, and everything from now on. A lot of people will find it sad, and they do get sad. They say, "Oh, summer's so wonderful." It's, yeah, but you can't have one without the other. You have to watch it then
mm.
seep back. And at this time of year, I'd say everything is seeped right down as low as it's going to go. And now they've got
Yeah, yeah,
everything coming back up, and we'll end
yeah,
up with
yeah,
that
yeah.
crescendo moving forward, and it sort of dries forward at such a rate in April, May, and June, and then you hit those couple of moments, and I sit down on
Mm.
a bench somewhere and think, no, that's it. What am I going to do next year? And then I've started planning sort of
Oh, totally, completely. I was just thinking then in my head. I remember I was in the outback and I went,
rip
"Oh,
it,
a
rip it.
cloud! I haven't seen
Yeah.
one of those in 4 months." But when it's always summer, you
Yeah.
never appreciate
No,
it.
no.
And the whole seasons, it
I
is
look at it, I
remarkable.
look at it and go, right, now I'm going to rip the hell out of it. I'm just going to rip it apart and put it back together again because I
Oh,
know
I
I can,
know.
I can just tweak it. But to do that, I've got to break all the eggshells and I've got to make an omelette and beat it back together. And then next year it'll be absolutely fabulous.
Well, this is why we're having to move because I said to Mally, I said, if we stay here any longer, I'm going to rip this garden up and start all over again. And I've spent far too much money on it. So I said, let's just sell it and move house. And can I get bored? I'm like, no, I mustn't do any more to the garden. It's
Wow.
fine as it is.
Well,
But yeah, no,
well,
it's
North Lodge went on the market the day after I laid the final paving slab on our sunken terrace.
ah!
Because I knew it just wasn't going to be enough. I'd
Yeah,
finished it, and
yeah.
don't get me wrong, maintaining it is an absolute pleasure. But I would like 5 acres at home. I'd like to be
Mm,
able to create media full time. And much I have a very complicated garden here, I
mm,
know there is more to be had, and I've got it in my head that I need to do this before I reach a certain age. I'm in my mid 40s now, and it is
mm.
not. It's let's talk about this. Basically, it is not as easy as it was when I was 30 something. It takes its
Yeah,
toll. It takes me
yeah.
days to recover from something that used to take me 10 minutes to recover from, and I think. Now, if I don't do this before I'm 50, there's going to be some severe problems now. So I'm going to
That is the issue. I mean,
have to
I've
pull
just
my
turned
finger out and
40.
get on with it.
Yeah, I've just turned 40, and I think, well, how hard do you work? I said, I've had two hernias, new shoulder, carpal tunnel done, blah, blah, blah. And I'll go, well, that's what happens in gardening. You just go, oh, don't worry, I can shift that 3-ton stone over there a bit. It'll go. Yeah.
I still haven't fully recovered from lifting the monolith stone that went into our water tank. If I'm honest, that's it's it's one of those things that you can't get two sets of hands round. There's not enough stone to get two people round, so you're left with no choice but to pick it up on your own. But at
Yeah.
135 kilos, it's a
Bloody hell. Well done.
well,
That's
yeah,
very good.
and add that to the fact you're in water. Try it.
Oh my goodness. And the darn thing
So
won't float either. So,
no, no, no. And I'm thinking if I put it down, it ends up at the bottom of the tank, it's job done. And my osteopath said, "What have you done to yourself?" It's like I lifted this stone. He said, "How heavy was it?" And his face just went white. He said, "What the hell?" It's like, yeah, sorry. Can you fix it?
yeah,
Mate.
I have to slightly admit my one extravagance to myself. I was so sick and tired of seeing chiropractors and masseuses for my back. I bought a
Hmm.
hot tub, and it was
Uh-huh.
probably the best thing I've ever bought because I literally went to them. I said, "Look, just give me the most powerful back busting one you've got." And it's brilliant, and it absolutely belts my
Uh,
back to pieces. And yeah, it's the one thing that sort of keeps me going. And I go, I know the running costs are horrific,
no, we
but
got
it's
rid of ours for that exact reason.
oh, I know, but I looked at it, okay, it cost me 100 quid a month on electricity, but going for a massage
It's
twice a
gonna
month is
it's costs
200
you
quid.
exactly more money,
And I
more
can
money.
go in it every day and it just relaxes the muscles.
Wow.
And, we're definitely getting older and
Oh,
stuff. So,
stop it! You're making me really miss mine now.
oh no, well, I think they're quite cheap secondhand. I mean, I got mine part used, so I wasn't about to spend a stupid sum of money, but it was definitely a wise decision. But yeah, I think I always remember when I was younger, they're saying, be careful of your back, be careful of your arm, look after yourself. And you think, oh, I'm fine, I'm invincible. And start to get old, you go, oh yes,
No.
I have started to notice this. And
Yeah, it's funny. The weeping willow tree here is one of the biggest features of our garden, and it's a constant
mm,
battle with our insurance company. They want it down, and I won't take it down. So it has to be maintained. It has to be knuckled back every single year. But it's actually a lot bigger and a lot higher than it looks. And
mm,
you have to go up the ladder, up the 2.5 stage ladder, and you look down and you think, if I hit the ground now at 44,
yeah,
that's my career done. I will never garden again. So you
yeah.
become a little bit more cautious.
Well, we got the tripod ladder. I remember going to Chelsea Flower Show and saw it. I thought this thing is
From
brilliant.
henchmen, yeah, yeah. If
Yeah,
you're working on your own, they're
yeah,
absolutely essential. Yeah.
they are. But I remember getting, how big is it? 14 steps. Perfect. That'll do it. And then I have all I love doing topiary as well, and I thought that looks a bit boring, that yew tree. So what I'll do is I'll grow some, maybe I'll do balls on top or anything. And then my boss goes, "Oh, you've put satellites on top," and I think they look like urns personally, but it's too high. So now I have to put a three-stage ladder against the yew tree to get
Oh
all the way to the
goodness,
top with a hedge cutter, and I'm like, this is getting really
it's
stupid.
a bit too much. Yeah.
Yeah, but I
For me,
promise I refuse to take it off. So,
for me, it's the extra long reach on the hedge cutter. I don't know if you have one of these, but
oh
obviously
crumbs, yeah,
with
yeah.
with the multiple power head, you can put an extra shaft into the long reach, and
Oh, I've got two. Mhm.
that extra motion, it just literally it ruins my hips. It's just like
Ah,
all of that weight. Anyway,
yeah.
less stories of us aging and getting old. I'm dying to
Ah,
know. I'm dying to know. Earlier in the year, you found a pair of secateurs
oh,
that had you had lost in May
yeah.
and refound in November. I want to
Mhm.
know, how are the Felcos?
I've actually got them in the house, and I'm going to get a frame made and hang them in the frame because I did have to buy another pair. But I
You're not
bought
going to
those
say
when I
you're not going to send them back to Felco to be reconditioned?
they were fine. I literally oiled them up and they were fine.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah. But I bought those when I was 18,
Yeah.
and
Again,
I can't afford to lose them. I just they meant so much, and I remember paying like £85 for them when I was 18. It was a lot of money then,
oh,
and
it's a lot of money now. Yeah.
well, yeah, quite. I mean, £85 now is not as much as it was 25 years ago, but yeah. So no, I've got them at home, and I've got another pair for work now. But
Okay.
they're the only pair that I think the Felco 13s, and the only pair that actually fit my hand.
Hmm.
Because like as everyone says, I've got hands like shovels, so
Well,
which is a good thing.
I'm I'm in a number eight, and everybody is always astonished by how big those are. Because one of the biggest questions I get asked is, what secateurs do you use? And I say to people, I can only tell you the brand. You really need to go and you need to
Yeah,
handle them. They need to be personal
yeah,
to you. They become an extension of who you are. I don't feel
completely.
comfortable or dressed without them now. I mean, I'm
Mm.
holstered and ready to go whenever I go out.
Well, the problem I always put them in my back pocket, and the amount of pockets I've got with holes in the bottom because the secateurs have gone through my trousers. So, uh, but then you sit down on the tractor seat, and like, what the hell? Oh, it's my secateurs, right? Great. So
So the secateurs are safe and well. They're going to be used as an art installation. They're going to be mounted and framed in the house.
yeah, well, I'm going to have a little hook, and then when I'm gardening here, I'll always make sure they go back into the picture
Uh,
frame. So
okay, all right.
yeah, and then when I'm old and grey, really old, I can go. I've had those since I was 18. So yeah, because the great thing is you can just buy the parts to repair them.
Well,
So
again, I mean, I say you can send them back to the manufacturer, and they will, like a barber jacket. They'll redip the handles, change the blades, completely
yeah,
recondition them, so they'll
yeah.
come back literally looking like they did 25 years ago.
Yes, yeah, no, they've been good. I mean, I went when I was at Chelsea last time. I just handed them in, and they took them on the day. So
Oh, perfect,
yeah,
lovely.
yeah, and then they were back in 2 weeks, and they were great. So it was spot on. So, but yeah, it's one most important tool you can get is a good pair of secateurs. So
Indeed, yeah, yeah. And they keep
mm,
them clean and keep them sharp. I've got one final question, which is a question I'm asking every guest that joined me in season one of the Garden Bone podcast. Was,
hmm
if you had to leave the garden, either your garden or your work garden, if you had to leave it in a hurry and you could never return, is there a plant that you would take with you, and why would you take that particular plant?
Good Lord, that's a question and a half,
It
isn't it?
is, isn't it?
What would I take with me? I'll try and take the garden if I'm honest. Um,
You've got a limited luggage allowance. You can only take
okay.
15 kilos. So,
I've got a nice Butylon I quite like. I've sort of propagated that on, and I was quite chuffed with that. So that
yeah,
was, and it's a sort of variegated one, and it's lovely.
very
And I've got
nice. And what colour are the flowers?
sort of an orangey yellow.
Uh-huh.
It's a beautiful plant, and I've just, when you get something and you just bring it on and it grows. Actually, saying that, I have actually got my black tree fern at work, which
Okay.
I'll probably steal that because I got that at Tatton Flower Show. It cost me an absolute arm and a leg, and yeah, it has to live in the greenhouse. It will not survive outside. So
Now,
yeah,
I must admit, I'm very, very proud of my two tree ferns. I'm very protective of my tree. I look at them all sorts of time. I posted them to my grid just a day or two ago. It's like
I saw, yeah,
I've got a pair of ancient olives as well. I've got a pair of 300-year-old olives, which I'm
wow,
again, well, lucky enough because obviously I've got a works wagon. I've got a 3.5 ton truck that I drive for work. That actually
Mm.
part of the problem with these really large pieces is to be able to move them, and obviously I can move them. So and
Well, look,
I just built walls round them.
yeah. Well, and I remember when we moved into our house here, and they all thought we'd gone to Chelsea Flower Show because there was tree ferns moving in with us when we moved house, and everyone's like, "What on earth is going on?" And I was like, "Yeah, they're coming with me. I'm not leaving them when I sell the house. They're off."
Well,
So
650 plants came with us from our last garden to this
wow.
house. It took
So you
three.
couldn't choose one then?
No. Well, but we had a rented property beforehand that we were supposed to be buying, and our
Ah,
landlords at the time thought we were so settled that they could get away with sort of charging us £150,000 over asking price, which
oh,
wasn't going to
swine.
happen. So, and
Yeah, quite.
it just so happens that it happened at a certain time of year, and my husband looked at me and said, "Don't you even think about it?" It's like, well, everything's asleep. If I like got a lot of pots, because obviously I know I'm in the trade, so I went to a local
Mm,
trade centre and I got hundreds and hundreds of really big pots, and
yeah.
I bought 4 tons or 4 cubic meters of compost, and I dug everything up,
I
literally
don't
everything.
blame you. Yeah,
No, I
yeah. And it's
brought the
so
whole lot.
expensive, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's everything adds up, and but I think if they say what's your favorite, it's just we're obsessed with dahlias at the minute. Everything's going mad for dahlias in the garden, and it just
It's nice to see them having a renaissance. It really is.
ah
I'm hoping the chrysanthemum, the big
yeah.
globe chrysanthemums, do the same. I want to see a return to the 50s and 60s of showing
Oh,
them.
they're amazing, and they
Yeah,
flower so late, and they
yeah.
they give you that color. I was trying to get my boss into them, Inga, and she's like, "No, no, they're old ladies." I'm like, "No, but the colors and
Very
this is
much,
incredible."
very much into the granny chic here. I'm afraid it's.
No, no, I agree. Anything. But the thing is, when you say what pushes your season right to the end, and I
That's
always
it.
say
Yeah.
for me it's dahlias because they will keep flowering till the frost and then bang they're down, and they just that is my point, and it just and I dig a couple of hundred up every year, and out they go again, and so yeah, no,
Wonderful.
love it.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. It's really been a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh no, thank you very much for having me.
I'm gonna ask absolutely everybody that's listening along to go and find your Instagram account. Obviously, I'll tag you in this particular post, but thank you very much for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely, no
Take good
problem. Thank
care.
you so much for having me.
Bye
Cheers.
bye now. Bye.
Bye.
I really can't believe that Tristan keeps all of those acres up together to such a high standard all on his own. I hope you enjoyed listening to our conversation and that you head over to Instagram and give him a follow. He uses the handle Cheshire Head Gardener on Instagram, so do head across and show him some love. Next week on episode 3, I have the absolute pleasure in sharing with you the internet sensation Urban Farm and Kitchen. Luai is the man behind the account and has the most interesting story. He shares not only his growing experience but also his cookery journey through blogs and, of course, his cookbook. I've had the pleasure in talking to him before on an Instagram live event, but thought it would be really nice to revisit the conversation and share his account with you all. So join me again next week for episode 3. Till then, take good care and happy gardening. I'll see you all again next week.